Robert, for Thomas, for the introduction. Today we will give you more insights about the IT location Austria, about funding and founding, and as well my colleagues later on will give you also more insights about IT qualified employees. Today it's our pleasure. My name is Jakub Zenzic, and my colleague Birgit Reiter-Braunwieser will give you more insights now about the IT location, and our presentation will last approximately 20 minutes. We have a testimonial from Israel as well, Rolf Kidram, the CEO of X-Type.io. And yeah, I would kindly ask you to put some questions in the chat, and we will do later on after our session some Q&A and response. Otherwise, another option is reach out at the B2B Software Days, at the chat, or you visit us at our booth next week on Monday and Tuesday. So I shortly also make a brief introduction about our agency and our departments. We have 3 departments. The first of all, where I and Birgit are working, is the department Invest in Austria, and we assist foreign companies, startups, and entrepreneurs by exploring and expanding in Austria. And as we are state-owned, our services are free of charge. The second department is Work in Austria, and my colleague Veronica and as well Elisabeth will give you more insights later on of the session, because they have afterwards also their own session. And they assist Austrian companies by getting highly qualified workers with the working permit, how to do and how to attract, and also with immigration issues. And the last one would be the film location, and they assist, for example, series, Netflix productions, also funding and financing regarding this. For example, Spectre was made in Austria, or Extraction 2, which comes soon on Netflix. What adding value has the business location? Our main goal is to promote Austria internationally as a business location, as well to accompany international companies, startups, and entrepreneurs from the beginning to the end with the investment process. And as well, if they already set up the business here in Austria, we assist them as well with expanding, with funding, financing options, etc. So I head on to my colleague Birgit, and she will now give you more insights about the IT location Austria, and stage is yours.
So a very warm welcome also from my side. The plan for the next 40 minutes is as follows. First, I will give you a short overview of the IT location Austria, and then actually we have X-Type, fairly newly founded Austrian company that was founded by Ron Gideon. We will interview with Ron to share his experiences and to learn from him why he actually decided to set up his IT company in Austria. And as Jakub already mentioned, please feel free to write us any questions that you may have in the chat. And we will make sure that at the end of the next 40 minutes, we will pick up the questions. You can pose the questions to any one of us. And if we don't have enough time, then certainly we will make sure that we will answer the questions in writing later on, or also certainly next Monday, Tuesday, in case you come physically to Vienna, more than happy to then also continue our discussion physically at the event in the Vienna City Hall. Okay, but let's start with Austria. What do you know of Austria, and what comes to mind when you actually think of Austria? Well, I guess that there are nice chocolate cakes in Vienna that most people know. But what's already a little bit less known is, did you actually know that the most valuable brand that we have in Austria is Red Bull? Red Bull was invented by Mr. Mateschitz, an Austrian.
Excuse me. But we do not see the presentation mode. So we see all your presentations, but not the mode. Maybe you can switch for us.
So what should I do?
We need the presentation mode that we see your screen.
Hold on 1 second.
Yes, please.
What do you see now?
Now it works perfect.
Okay, very sorry. Too many screens. Anyway, okay. Red Bull is headquartered actually in a little town outside of Salzburg with 1,500 inhabitants, and it's a global product. So Austria, I guess, stands for pristine environment, bucolic villages. What about business in Austria? What about digitalization in Austria? And actually, when it comes to IT location Austria, probably even less is known. Did you actually know that fundamental AI research for speech recognition technology that is used today globally actually originated in Austria? Or did you actually know that Amazon carries out R&D activities in Austria? Or has it ever crossed your mind that Microsoft by now employs over 1,000 employees in Austria? Or that actually, in fact, also Alphabet has already recognized the AI talent available in Austria by investing in a freshly founded Austrian AI startup? I guess these are lesser known facts about Austria. I hope I got your brain already to work. Here is the solution to the little riddles that I just mentioned. The guy who often is being cited as father of AI, who is from Austria, is Professor Sepp Hochreiter. He is still one of the leading figureheads on the topic of AI in Austria. He is still carrying out R&D at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, and he is also heading the Institute of Advanced Research of Artificial Intelligence in Austria. Or, for example, Amazon has an R&D center in Graz, closely collaborating with the Technical University in Graz on drone software technology, actually. And many other leading international IT companies have actually chosen to acquire Austrian companies, and since then have expanded the operations in Austria. For example, Qualcomm has taken over Wikitude and is now actually having a hub for augmented reality R&D in Austria. The newly founded AI startup that was acquired by Alphabet recently actually was founded in Vienna only in 2022. It's called Magic Dev. And right away, Alphabet invested 20 million in that startup to actually help them develop new cutting edge AI-supported software programming. Last but not least, Kaleido, perhaps also known to some of you, they do the automated removal of background for videos and pictures. They were acquired by Canva, the global leading company in this area. And again, here also, they have even expanded the R&D activities in Austria, being part of the large international corporate by now. And Microsoft, as it was already mentioned, Microsoft by now employs over 1,000 employees in Austria. Only 300 of them are in sales. The rest is actually in data services. And Microsoft actually also last year announced that they are setting up now 3 data centers in Austria. Austria is becoming the cloud region Austria East. And that is really a good sign of recognition for Austria, because it means that Austria fulfills the highest quality standards when it comes to data safety and security, but also facts such as sustainability. Microsoft, for example, only sets up these cloud regions if there is 100% renewable energy for the data centers available that Austria actually already fulfills. So, a few facts about Austria. Austria by now 9 million inhabitants, one of the highest GDP per capita in the European Union with 45,000 euro per capita. Austria belongs to the richest countries. Austria is a small open economy, highly export oriented. 55.8% is the export ratio here. And that is also important and actually also expresses the fact that many international companies choose Austria for their hub within the European Union, and then the companies export from Austria. Productivity is 12% above EU average, and Austria boasts a very high R&D quota. 3.26% of the Austrian GDP is being spent on research and development. What about the IT sector and its importance for the Austrian economy? The ICT sector contributes close to 14% to Austrian GDP and employs approximately 250,000 employees. Overall revenue was around 60 billion euros. And among the IT companies in the sector, there are also approximately 800 companies that carry out R&D activities. When you think of Austria, you probably think of a country where it's nice to go on vacation. But can you actually guess how much the tourism sector contributes to the Austrian GDP and how much the industrial production sector contributes to it? What would you guess? Well, actually, in fact, tourism only contributes 15% to the Austrian GDP, whereas the industrial production sector contributes almost 1/3. Why is that important? Because I guess many of the IT companies have B2B business models and they are looking for strong corporate clients. Here in Austria, we do have a very well functioning industrial production sectors with very attractive B2B clients actually. And they also have a high payment morale and therefore are good clients to have. What you see on this slide is actually that Austria spends 3.26% of GDP on research and development. Why is that important? Because I think it also showcases how Austria has caught up over the course of the last 20 years. While back in 2000, Austria started out at the EU average of R&D spending. Over the course of the last 20 years, Austria has caught up and even slightly surpassed Germany. And you know, Austrians always like to compare themselves with the Germans. So Austria is really up here on top together with the Scandinavian countries investing heavily in R&D. Why is that important? Because I think the government has understood that only thanks to continuous R&D efforts will the companies be able to continue turning out innovative services and products that are at the basis of the competitiveness of the Austrian economy. And also international companies have discovered that Austria is a good location for carrying out R&D activities. While international companies only constitute 3.4% of the total number of Austrian companies, Nevertheless, the international companies are responsible for over 50% of the R&D expenditures in Austria. And we have leading companies such as Infineon, for example, the chip maker, German chip maker, that have large R&D activities in Austria and certainly also benefit from the Austrian R&D subsidy schemes that are available. I will explain a bit more further. So, as an IT company, why should you establish also in Austria? First and foremost, I think market access. Austria is an attractive market. Austria serves as your hub within the European Union to service the large EU market. Austria itself is a rich country, therefore good corporate customers as well as good consumers as customers. And Austria, with 9 million inhabitants, being roughly 1/10 of the DACH region, often I hear from companies that they expand to Austria first, they learn the lessons, they get the product offering right for the DACH region, and then they scale up to all of DACH in one go. Austrian purchasing power is well above the EU average. That is also important for those of you who have B2C business models. Second, important factor why companies expand to Austria certainly is the whole topic of security and stability in uncertain times like these. What I mean by this is it's the personal safety and security, but it's actually also the protection of the intellectual property rights that are strongly observed here in Austria, as well as the overall climate here. Austria has virtually no strikes because we have the so-called social partnership in place where the Employers Association negotiates with the union to agree peacefully on the next pay rise rather than going on strike. Or, for example, also with regards to sustainability, Austria is already a green energy champion. We have already more than 75% of energy comes from actually renewable energy resources. Remember, this was one of the criteria why Microsoft actually, in fact, decided to make Austria a cloud region. Third most important argument, I think, is the overall talent that's available in Austria. We have a very strong and good educational system. The Austrian employees are highly motivated and highly productive, and generally speaking, also rather loyal. In terms of educational system, there is actually a dual education. Those who drop out of high school, they actually continue to go on into an apprenticeship. We have also strong vocational schools that turn out highly interesting graduates for the businesses. Certainly, we have a high number of universities, as well as universities of applied science, a modern and flexible labor law. For example, the Austrian labor law is more employer-friendly than, for example, the German, or not even to speak about the French one. And we have strong English proficiency skills available among the young generation. There are top-notch professors teaching as well as carrying out research, also in the area of programming. AI was mentioned. We have also, for example, the University of Innsbruck has a strong focus on quantum physics. So depending on what you're looking for, the talents are available. And this is actually also because we have a strong proportion of international students at Austrian universities. Again, if you look at the proportions, guess who has the largest student community in the DACH area compared with the overall population? Vienna has 10% students among its population. Out of the 1.9 million inhabitants, we have over 191,000 students here in Vienna. And again, 35% of them are international students. And these international students, if they get the right job offer, they would like to stay and continue working in Austria. So the talent is available for newcomers in the Austrian labor market as well. Fourth key argument, in my opinion, is the overall innovation system that we have here. Austria is considered a strong innovator according to the EU Innovation Scoreboard. We are ranked on 8th position within the European Union. Austria has a strong dual system for supporting research and development. If you as a company carry out research activities in Austria, you can actually, on the one hand, apply for direct incentives. Here, the key governmental agency at the federal level is the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG. As well as you can combine these direct funding programs with the so-called research premium. That is a tax incentive. Retroactively, you can, as a company, actually claim back 14% of your research expenses that you have had from the financial authority in the form of the Austrian research premium. Per capita, the Austrian government is one of the top spenders for research subsidies. As you can see here, only France and Belgium spends more. Other than that, it's really already the Austrian government that provides the strongest R&D incentive support for also the companies. Yeah, and a few more about the framework conditions in Austria. Corporate income tax in Austria is 24%. Next year, it will be brought down further to 23%. Austria also has a modern group taxation regulation in place. We have a strong network of double taxation treaties in place. What about costs of doing business in Austria? Well, for example, rent for an office is rather moderate, simply because there is a large offer of suitable office space available. So here Vienna compares well with other European capitals. When starting business in Austria, what are the most common legal forms? The most common legal form here is a so-called limited liability company, GmbH in German. Here you have two options. The regular one has a share capital of 35,000 euros. There is also the so-called founder privileged version of it, where the share capital is only 10,000 euros. This legal form is often chosen in the startup environment, and it's perfectly fine to go for the smaller version of the so-called founder privileged limited liability company. The advantage of actually setting up an Austrian entity is that you position yourself in the market as an Austrian company. And also for the rest of the European Union, I think this is what many international companies aim for, to be considered an Austrian company, simply because an Austrian company has a very good image internationally. Funding? Well, Austria, as I already mentioned, is rather generous when it comes to subsidies for research and development. On the one hand, there are incentives being granted at the national level. Here, the two key players are the FFG, the main organizing agency of the software days that we are all part of, as well as Austrian Wirtschaftsservice, AWS, not to be confused with Amazon Web Services. Austrian Wirtschaftsservice is the second financing and funding agency of the federal government. There is strong support in the form of seed financing, also for startups. They also offer guarantees to help Austrian companies expand and grow. And then there are also at the regional level funding agencies. For example, for Vienna, the city-owned economic development agency is the Vienna Business Agency. And they, for example, also provide support and funding for Viennese companies. So if you attend the software days, certainly all these agencies are going to be present in the City Hall next week, and you can immediately touch base and get in contact. In short, before I actually give the floor to Jacob and Ron, how can we support international IT companies? Well, first of all, it depends on what stage you are at. In the early stage of simply exploring, when you simply explore Austria as a potential business location, we provide cost-free information, data, industry trends, market information. When it becomes already clear that you indeed want to set up an operation in Austria, we help you with information and answers to legal and tax-related questions you may have. We can help you with finding service providers, establish contacts with authorities. We certainly can also guide you what is the optimal location within Austria, and we help you also explore funding and financing options with the agencies at the federal as well as at the regional level. And we certainly can also help you find the necessary talent that you need in order to be successful in the Austrian market. So with that kind of an overview, I hand now over to Jacob and Ron, and they will actually, Ron will share why he actually, in fact, decided for Austria. So please.
Thank you, Birgit, for the introduction. Hi, Ron. Nice to see you again. I'm delighted that you are joining us from Tel Aviv, Israel. As mentioned, Ron is CEO of X-Type.io from Israel. He's co-founder and CEO. And it would be great if you can give our participants some experience what you connected with Austria, why you set up X-Type Austria, and what was the experience as well, how ABA maybe assisted you on this path, by I myself and maybe Birgit as well. And it would be great if you can tell us more around.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It is a pleasure. My let's call it romance with Austria actually started a long time before X-Type.io, and I think I told you it is more or less a coincidence. So briefly, I'll just share the story. The beginning was a coincidence. The follow-on was not. So in a nutshell, I've been in the very vibrant Israeli high-tech scene since the early 90s, working for small startups that became big companies, etc. And in the summer of 2012, I was getting in my car going home from work, and I got a call from Austria. It was a gentleman by the name of Gunther Flamm, who was one of the senior managers at an Austrian company called UC4 at the time. Later, it was renamed to Atomic Software, and it was a strange call. I admit I was kind of I didn't expect Austria, but Gunther was very persuasive. He was looking for someone to help build a product management group for UC4. And he suggested I come to Austria and meet the teams, which I did 2 weeks later. And I took a flight to Vienna. Tel Aviv to Vienna is a 3.5-hour flight, or 3:20. It's super easy. There are 2 flights. You can come in the morning and leave in the evening, and you'll be fine. Usually, if I go to Austria, I spend a little bit more time. And yeah, met with an entire team and decided I liked them, and I took the job. UC4 was actually founded in Wolfsgraben, which is a small village not so far away from Vienna, but very quickly had offices. And I worked with, and you can see them over here. This is Peter Sullman, my co-founder, and this is Tobias Stanzel. Peter is Hungarian, but lived in Austria. He lives in Austria for 20 years or more, and Toby is born and bred Viennese. And we worked together as colleagues, and Atomic grew and was sold to CA and became very big. And during that time, I met a lot of colleagues. Marco over here was also at Atomic, so was Gerhard, and we just became friends. And when the time was right to start my company, it was very obvious to me who I want to work with. And this was Peter and Toby. Luckily for me, they both agreed. I said, okay, so we're going to be an international company from day one. And we set up X-Type, and we started, we started mocking about 3.5 years ago, but technically we started in the middle of end of 21. We had a lot of issues in the beginning. We didn't understand, whether we need a branch office or a GmbH, and we had an Israeli LTD, and we set up one and we closed it. This is where you came in. You helped me a lot. Thank you very much with the understanding. Open up a bank account. It was great help. And so today we are just shy of 25 people in the company. We sell software primarily in the US markets, but also in Europe. This is the team. You can see, I can count American, Austrian, American, Israeli, Austrian, Israeli, Austrian, Hungarian, Austrian, Israeli, Austrian living in Bali, Israeli, Austrian. And we have a few more. So it's kind of funny. I am now a strange animal in the Israeli IT thing, because I have a lot more, working relationships in Austria than in Israel. But we are fairly global. So we have R&D in Austria. We have R&D, a little bit of R&D in Israel. We have most of our sales and marketing in America, but we also operate in Germany and in the DACH market.
But you had a success to target the DACH market from Austria. It was now working smoothly, and you can achieve, as in Austria, as a gateway, especially to the DACH market, to the Central and Eastern European countries, as well to the Western European countries.
Correct.
If there is anything planned to in the future more, to do more R&D in Austria or something else on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are actually, and it's not official news, but we're going to grow very significantly soon. And part of that growth is in engineering, which most of it is running from Austria. We have a very strong team in Vienna. We have a great culture that goes together with it. So there is absolutely an Austrian spirit in it, but it is international in the sense that, and by the way, we all work on Zoom and Slack and etc. We did a company meeting where this was actually taken in the Jazz in the City Hotel, is where this picture was taken over in Vienna when we got the whole company together. So yeah, we are going to grow. And the R&D center the center of R&D is in Austria, and is going to continue to stay there.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips from our participants how to acquire or to conquer the EU market in general? What you should be aware of, to keep in mind?
Yeah. So strangely, when it comes to sales, so let me just caveat everything I say with the fact that I have been my entire life in enterprise software and B2B, and that's the sort of mindset that I'm talking from, selling to large organizations. We sell expensive software that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to large companies. And so that's the sort of background to what I'm going to talk about. It may be different. There are obvious cultural differences between the US and as a primary market, EU, and of course APJ, which I'm going to leave out because at the moment we don't touch so much. Actually, one of my tips to the audience, I think, is a little bit out of course with what you said, is, in Israel we very close to Austria. We're about 9 million people. The IT industry is bigger than in Austria, but it's been around and it's very large. And one of the things that I highly recommend, and I know all companies in Israel kind of do, is that when we start the company, we target the global market, meaning have the mindset of the entire world. For me, what it meant is the US and Europe, but keep it in mind strong. I think if you just focus on one market, your culture kind of sticks in that market, and it gets, and you may find very early success, but I think overall it then becomes a challenge to grow because you have to penetrate a new market, etc. So as an example, simple little tip, but sure, we talk, sometimes we talk Hebrew between the Israelis and German in the Austrian, but company communication, email, Slack, is all in English. Why? Because it just captures everyone. It's not my native tongue, it's not Toby's native tongue, but it creates this thing. So that's just one approach. Then, you run globally, think globally, but you operate locally. Meaning, if you're going to sell in France, I highly recommend French people. If you're going to sell in the DACH region, I highly recommend Austrians, Germans, Swiss. If you're selling in the US, highly recommend. And the key is how to take your people and tie them into your specific culture, which is a company thing. You can be Austrian and still have a global culture. And then they are your representatives. So that way, the ability to cross borders, which I think is very key, can be achieved. And maybe the last thing I'll say is that it's also a huge pleasure, because besides business, and to me it's very important, aside from business, this is a really great experience to create a subculture called the company that actually allows people inside the company to experience other cultures. Israelis to meet Austrians. I'm telling you, I have my Israeli colleagues, I keep asking them, they love you guys. They love you guys. They're, it's so different and they love it. And hopefully that's the other way around too. And I don't know, for me, it's a lot of fun in the process to have that mixing up of people.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And yeah, as mentioned by Birgit as well, Vienna is a very international city. English is very common. It's here you can, every international, I guess, business startup company doing business, as it is very international, as well as students. And from here you can easily target the whole European Union in general. Ron, do you have something to add or regarding the business ICT location, Austria, or?
Maybe I'll just one other thing that I had in mind to say, and then that's it, is that the Austrian engineering talent, the uniqueness I find is there is a very, and look, I don't know all of Austria, okay? So maybe I'm skewing things and I'm only talking about the people I know, but my experience in the last 10 years is there is a very high sensitivity to quality in Austria. I think it's ingrained in the people. It probably comes from, the Austrian background. People are very sensitive to it. So that means, for me as a CEO, I have a very high level of trust, just based on experience, that when something works, it actually not just works today, it works tomorrow, it works next month, it works when we have 1,000 customers. So that's a huge plus and a benefit. There is great work ethics, and relatively compared to obviously the Silicon Valley or even Tel Aviv, it's reasonably priced. It's not, it's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive. So and like you say, Vienna is a great city. So it's just very nice. It's a nice place to work in.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Birgit is joining us as well again for the introduction. From the audience, are there any questions you could put on in the chat that we could answer for you?
Well, I guess if there are no questions, hang on one second, I have to move over to In any case, let's just do the following. I hope many of you have used this webinar today only as kind of a teaser to the real thing being the physical event on Monday and Tuesday next week in the Vienna City Hall. We as ABA Invest in Austria would be more than happy to actually dive into a real conversation with the participants of today's webinar. ABA is going to have a booth there. Please come by and find us, or actually at the event page, you can find all of us, including Ron, registered there. You can also send us a direct email through the tool, through the B2Match tool, and that way get your personal questions answered. We hope that we have, well, got the juices going and created hopefully some food for thought for you to perhaps have a closer look into the IT location Austria and to start exploring it further. We at ABA Invest in Austria certainly would be happy to be of support. As a governmental agency, all our services are free of charge. And with that, actually, I think, Jakob, we would close
and hand over to our colleagues, to Veronika Tilliam from Work in Austria and Elise Palfner
from Work in Austria. They will deep dive now into the whole topic of IT specialists. On the one hand, if you're an Austrian company, how to actually hire and legally get the residence and work permit for an IT specialist from a country outside of the European Union. And certainly for the other participants, it will be all about the topic of how to perhaps even immigrate to Austria as an IT specialist. Thanks so much. That's it from our side.